Okay, we're going to get started, guys. So the presentation is public APIs for Asterisk with Kong. My name is Gaston. Everybody calls me Gus. I work for Nexacom. We've been working with Asterisk since 2005 when my lifelong friend told me about this crazy project, and we're very excited with it, and we kind of started playing with it, and it was really a game, and we haven't stopped ever since, and we kind of moved that logic towards pretty much every technology that's lying around, and so there's a special place in our company for playing around with technology. We are New York-based and Dallas-based. We are a call center solution in the cloud. We provide telephony services, and we are heavily integrated into our clients' systems. The idea was to show you kind of the layout of our infrastructure, and that was going to be too much, and I've lost my glasses, so I couldn't really make it up to make the entire diagram. But to give you an idea, this is our scenario usually, right? We have multiple solutions and services. We are in the trend of less PBX, more services. We've been there for at least 5 years. We have less customizations and more integrations. That's very important. Back in the day, we used to, we were the Asterisk guys, and we would go in there and we do crazy customizations. We would even write modules for Asterisk. Right now, we're really into the integrations, and given the size of our company, we are located in multiple data centers. So we needed a API gateway, basically because we do a lot of integrations. And now most customers come and say, listen, I have my people, we have this system, we have this CRM, we have this ERP, we have this, we have that. For the ERP, we need these reports. For the CRM integration, we need these and that. And so they basically tell us, listen, let us get the information, let us control the system. We'll deal with it. We'll send the dotted line that we're responsible if everything goes straight to the atmosphere, but we want to access it, okay? And so we knew, back in the day, we used to look for things we needed. Now we know the things we don't need. I guess that happens when you become larger, right? You have more restrictions, you're more concerned about certain things, and there are certain things that you just cannot put into your infrastructure. So the things we knew that we didn't know, we didn't want is where does everything under the sun kind of solution, right? This is huge and does everything you would ever need, and usually a tenfold more than you would ever. Big application, GUI driven, even if we can customize it, right? For us, that was a big no-no, because at the end of the day, even though their solutions are great and they do their job very good and very well, and they have lots of tools, and they can be customized through the GUI, that means more work for us, because most of our infrastructure was built by us, and the components were written by us. So, even though we try hard and hard to go standard every day, at the end of the day, that's a lot of work. They're usually business process driven, right? And we are in the infrastructure side, so that doesn't really work. And they usually have a methodology and a way of doing things. Components are mostly custom, and the phrase that describes this kind of solution is complete solution, right? Which may sound great, but it didn't make it for us. What we needed was quite the opposite, right? A single function scope, small application. We need to be able to access it via an HTTP REST API. We've been doing this HTTP REST all the things approach for the last easily 3-4 years now. We've been huge fans when Asterisk released its REST API. Function-driven, agnostic regarding methodology. We do the things the way we do them, okay? You just do your job. And single program solution, right? So that's why we went for Kong after going over the entire scenario, which there are many solutions, many of them open source. And we went for Kong. So what is Kong? Basically, Kong is an API gateway, meaning it's an HTTP reverse proxy, right? So this translates basically into people see it, they don't see anything behind it, okay? Is the main entrance, and it takes care of everything, and that's all they see, period. So everything else is behind Kong. It's not a single server, but we'll get there afterwards. And these is very helpful because given the trend we've been going through, right, we have lots of systems that do different things in our infrastructure, right? If we need to take care of sending SMS, then we have this SMS engine, right, that other applications talk to. It's not embedded into other solutions. It's just the SMS engine. Same applies to dialers, same applies to pretty much every other aspect of our business. And so when a client would come in and say, listen, I need access to IVR, SMS, this and that, back in the day, what we would do is we would have these, custom solution developed, and we would provide an API, and we'll work with the API over and over again, right? And that doesn't work for most people. So Kong makes a great fit for this because that's all it does, period. So if you're asking yourself, what's Kong? Can it do these and that? Is it more than a reverse proxy? What you're asking, is it? Yes, then it's outside Kong, okay? You can write your own module, of course, but then that's a slippery slope. So these are the credentials, right? It's an API gateway. It's under Apache license 2. It was released by Mashape in 2015. The company supporting is Mashape, which is a San Francisco-based company, which has many other projects. There's the repo and the site. What's the ecosystem? So, right, because we said, okay, we have these tools that we're going to try and use. Well, what's around it, right? Like I said before, whenever we put in a solution into our infrastructure, we're careful about a lot of things. One of them is the ecosystem that it's growing in. So Connect has the other components that we deal with on our own terms, but they have their solutions, which are Gelato and Galileo. Galileo takes care of the API analytics, and Gelato is the API development portal. So if you don't have those expertise, or you do have them, but you're still in the making, and well, you can very well go ahead and buy them support for those services, and on top of that, you've got Kong hosted, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to know this, but Kong in itself is open source, independent, and like I said before, what's really nice about it, it does what it does, period. And I really, really like that. Couldn't stress it more. It's easy to say, okay, once we go down the rabbit hole, it's easy to say, okay, it's an HTTP proxy, reverse proxy, sorry, but what are the components with Kong? So you know what you cannot do, what you have and what you don't, right? So Kong is not directly built on top of Nginx. It's built using OpenResty, right? Which is the web server application, the web application server, sorry. And it uses Lua just-in-time, right, which is the Lua JIT compiler. And that is working on top of Nginx, right? So basically, Kong uses Resty, which uses itself Nginx. So that's the rabbit hole. And it's kind of important to know so, because when you're thinking about features or new things coming up, if you look into Nginx and it says, okay, this came up, so okay, Kong should have it. Well, no, there's a long trail for that feature to get up there. And Lua is the programming language in which you can program those modules, right? Kong itself is entirely programmed in Lua. Okay, so if you're fluent in Lua, then you're in a better position to build your own Kong module. I separated these two because that's the reverse proxy component, but obviously the data layer is very important. One thing I haven't mentioned, it's kind of obvious, but I'll still mention it, is that these mammal is meant to live in big groups, okay? You don't see an orangutan on itself. Well, neither you should see Kong alone, okay? It's a sad Kong. Don't do that. So the data layer becomes very important. So you'll find in the documentation that pretty much you have two options, which are you're going to go down Cassandra way or you're going to go Postgres way. And if you're more proficient in one or the other, you'll pick one or the other. Now, you need to understand that it's a given point, and for specific plugins, and I'll get to that later, you'll need something more real-time. So you'll need something like Redis, okay, which is the flavor of choice. Do I get to choose? No, pretty much when it comes to Kong terms, the data layer is pretty much defined, okay? So either you use Cassandra or Postgres for pretty much all the configuration, right? Where all the configuration will live and stay, and Kong will retrieve the information from those from that data layer on a basic period of time. Or you use Redis for real-time plugins. So the functionality that Kong provides, and this is beautiful because it's just in that layer, is authentication, security, traffic control, serverless, which we don't use particularly because we have our own cloud, so that one we don't use yet. Analytics and monitoring, transformations, and login. The logic that Kong applies is it does everything through plugins. Okay, so these plugins basically are modules. You would call an Apache module, although they're not dynamically linked. So we have different plugins. There's more than this. These are the mostly used, right? And for authentication, obviously, you have auth, you have LDAP, you have basic authentication, you have key authentication, which is the most popular and easy to manage. One of the things that I mentioned at the beginning is the things we didn't need and kind of imply why we didn't need them. And one of the reasons is we do our billing, we do our login, we do pretty much everything. And we do ops, so we do operations. We call it ops, which is not the way everybody calls ops, which is literally operations, operating our infrastructure. And so we tie that with billing. So if a client has access to a certain API, that goes into ops, and ops is the one pushing that, right? So if a client goes through a client portal and changes its key, right? First of all, it's allowed to see the key because it has a contract that allows them to have that. And that needs to be pushed through ops. Ops needs to know that there was a modification in a key, and that goes to Kong, right? So to give you a scope, this is the reason why also Kong is really good for us, because it's easy to integrate with our solutions. Well, security, obviously, you have blacklist, you have a bot detection, module, which is based on a very, very long and hard to read regular expression. You can go ahead and modify if you want. But so it's totally, you can totally customize it. Traffic control. Traffic control is the main element I was mentioning before regarding Redis. So if you're doing traffic control, you'll be mostly doing rate limiting of some sort, right? And so if you're thinking about a single Kong, then you keep those counters somewhere, and there's a limit, and yada yada. But then when you have Kongs distributed across different data centers, right, and they may be serving the exact same client, the exact same, consumer and IP, and I'm sorry, consumer and key. Then those Kongs need to know what the count is, right? What are we up to? 5,000, 6,000, 7,000? Somebody needs to keep count and tell everybody. So that is the part where Redis comes in, and it's useful. If you don't need it, then that's a component you don't need. That's fine. But if you go into the rate limiting plugin, you'll see that a serious amount of configuration parameters are exclusively meant for Redis. Okay? Analytics and monitoring is kind of integrations with Galileo and data log and run scope and others. I have one here that I was using, which is Logly. You can see it's really easy to send information into Logly. Logly it has a Logly plugin, so all you do is you execute a command into a request into the HTTP API of Kong and saying, plug in Logly. You pass along the credentials, and that's it. Start sending into Logly. We don't use it, but it's a good example of how easy it is to set up an outside service. Let me put this out. There we go. So on the administration side, I'm sorry, did I forget something? I know I'm not supposed to go back. Login, okay, sorry, no, yeah, I forgot two that are very important, my bad, which are transformations and login, right? Transformations are beautiful. You can correlate requests, right, along the cluster, sort of what we call in Asterisk the call ID, sort of. And it does so obviously through custom X headers, HTTP, like it would. Those who come from the SIP world know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's really easy to handle, right? Regarding login, it has pretty much everything under the sun. UDP, TCP, HTTP, syslog, you name it. So if you have something like, obviously if you have syslog, you're going to do it, but maybe you have an ELK stack with Elastic at the back and some log stash in between and doing some Kibana. It's really easy to integrate. One thing I totally, again, forgot to tell, which is obvious, but it's not, is that it's a JSON world. So that's beautiful when it comes to sending. When I say ELK, everybody goes, how are the messages being sent? And you say JSON, and then we go, great. Thank you. Nobody wants to grog that out. That's Kong is JSON. I forgot to say, it speaks JSON, period. You have to go through hoops not to make it. And on the admin side, right, this is kind of the logic behind Kong, how you manage Kong. It has different objects, right, an API object, a consumer object, a plugin object, and an upstream object. These are the four main, although I did not sort them out in the correct order. These are the main objects for Kong, right? So API is basically the API that's being exposed. The consumer is the one that can access the API, so the client, okay? You're not forced to define a consumer, but I don't see why you would be in the case where you wouldn't, right? Because at least for us, the whole purpose of this is to be able to provide our clients with access to their systems. So we need to identify them. And the way you identify a consumer is really through authentication. You define a consumer and you assign an authentication method. If you don't assign an authentication method, then there's no way to identify a consumer. I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but that's pretty much the way it is. You have the plugin object, which means all of the functionality that I mentioned before, you can assign them to, globally speaking, an API, an entire API, or you can assign it to a consumer. You can assign it to groups of consumers. So there comes the marketing guy saying, wait, oh, that helps me create plans, rate plans. Like if you're in this plan, you're up to 100,000 requests a month. If you're in this plan, you're up to whatever, and so on and so on. So that's how you do it with COM. And the upstream object, which basically is the server at the back that you're sending the request to. Then you say the certificate object and the SNI object, which are obviously necessary because there's no way you can do this, or you shouldn't. You can without TLS. And so the SNI is the one that allows you to group APIs to use a single certificate. Okay, so let me. Yeah, sorry, my kid said, you need to put that in this. So I did. Let me, So, okay, I don't know if you can see anything there. So what I have here is, I have an outside, these kind of things are not meant to, like, I had to reread the documentation for Asterisk agent. Which I don't know if anybody still uses it, but I found a line that was funny, which is, this is not meant to be used directly on a web browser, right? Somebody actually wrote that, and I said, yeah, of course not, but wait, okay, so talking about obvious, right? And so this one is going to be the client, this one's going to be the client, this is Kong, and this is an Asterisk server behind Kong. Okay, so let me see. Yeah, now I understand that it would have been easier to do this. Sorry. So that was what I was displayed, okay? And that's what I'm going to do now. So it's a very simple demo. And what I'm going to do is, first off, I'm going to turn Asterisk down because I want to see something. So if there's a typo, you'll have to say, tell me, because I can't see anything without my glasses. Okay. So I meant that, and there you go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is in Kong, we're going to create the API. I'm creating an API called Astericon, okay? And it's going to allow requests coming into the kong.nexacom.net domain. And the upstream is going to be 1029.32.36 in port 8088. That's the Asterisk box, right? And I'm going to provide a URI called Roman, right, which is the URI to access the HM service in the micro HTTP server in Asterisk, right? I'm adding there strip URI false, so it doesn't strip the URI, otherwise it will come up with a 404, right? So that's that. I can see anything from here. Oh, it already exists. Okay, let's delete it. Yeah. I can see. Oh. There we go. So we've deleted the API entirely. So we create it again, and we get all the information, which is pretty much JSON with all the information that I provided, plus the unique ID for that API. You need to name APIs, and they'll give you an ID. We mostly use the ID, not the name. One would tend to deduct that then the name is not that important, but it's also a key. So that's food for thought there. You have to work on the name of the API, and you still get a unique identifier for it. Okay, so we got that, and Asterisk is down. So if I try and say authenticate into Asterisk from the outside, what I'm getting there, I'm running a request, again, kong.nexagon.net. The port is different. In this case, it's 8000. I'm asking for the URI Roman, and I'm using the login action, right? Which obviously should provide me 500 error, right? This is what I was saying before regarding Kong being in front of everything, hiding everything behind. In this case, it's basically saying that there's an unresponsive gateway, right? So if I am assuming things here, trust me, because I don't see anything. There we go. Okay. So next time you do that, right, you get a total different response. Right now, well, we were able to log in, to provide the credentials. I'm using HTTP, by the way, which is beautiful. Remember to set up the cookie, otherwise you won't be able to send the next command, right? And we got the response in there in the Asterisk server. So what happened here is that the request came into Kong. Kong sent it up the upstream properly, got the response from Asterisk, and sent it back out. If I were to ask for, if I were to add, for instance, an ID to that request, then that ID obviously won't be coming out, right? People that come from SIP are really bored of what I'm saying because all of this is pretty much the same, right? But remember, SIP comes from HTTP, so there. Okay, so now you're ready to start executing commands, and those commands are really boring. HTTP requests, right? Status, and you can. I cannot think of anybody that would use AGEM, right, for this, but I don't know. So what was that? Oh, thank you. I time out, absolutely. There we go. Okay. So we're seeing PJC AORs. We better get used to it since it seems it's going to go away. I love the flame words. It's just so fun. So much fun. So there. So now you can provide that client with a proper access to that. Because you have the client that needs it for whatever reason. I don't know what that reason may be. But this is a proper way to provide it and not start creating crazy things, right? To provide access to clients, to services that they should not access directly in the first place, as documentation clearly states. Because who reads documentation, right? Okay. So that's kind of basic. Now let's do something that's really more useful. We've been working and doing different stuff with ARI. So we have our drones, we have our Asterisk drones, right? And we run ARI applications. And so these may be the case with clients. We've learned that the things we do a couple of years afterwards, our clients do. And so we need to provide them access to them. So you can easily provide access to an ARI, not to an ARI, I mean to an ARI-enabled Asterisk server through Kong. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same API. All I'm going to do is I am going to modify it, so I'm going to patch it, right? And what I'm doing is I'm adding to the Asterisk API, I'm adding the URI ARI, right? Which is in this Asterisk, in this particular Asterisk server is already enabled, and so on. Hold on, I cannot see anything. Which one did I do? Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that one I saw. Yeah, it's supposed to. It's a list of the ARIs. Let me do something fast right now because I don't have time to. Mm-hmm. Let me do this and this. I type here because I see here, which is very useful with that. I'm sorry. I don't know. There you go. Bye-bye. You won't be destroying APIs this easy on production, obviously. I hope not. Did I remove it? Ah, sorry. Now I see whatever. I see what I did. See the name there? Yeah. There you go. Sorry. Okay. So there's at the bottom you see that there's an additional URI, which was what I meant to do with a patch, but I don't know what I did wrong, so now I'm going to move on with my life and yours. And okay, so now what we have is the exact same scenario. Except what I'm going to do is I'm going to let me put it here so I can see it, sorry. There we go. So what I'm going to do is, there we go. This is the one I couldn't find. Because I was fancy. I send the API. I try to be fancy. I have an ARI application. And I was fancy, and instead of I moved it into the SBean, but I forgot how I named it, so it became kind of a problem to execute it. So this is an ARI application, and obviously there is a piece of dial plan in the Asterisk server for it. And what's going to happen is the ARI application is going to initiate via the HTTP request through Kong. Kong is going to send it upstream into the Asterisk server, and the sessions are going to upgrade. They're going to go into WebSockets, and it's going to work, hopefully. Okay, we have everything in place. Yeah, let me put something different here. See nothing. Okay. So what happened there is that the application got initiated, got through Kong, went down the line, and got back, right? If you were to see the packets, the HTTP packets, you would see how the session upgraded to WebSockets, and everything's fine. Starting in the early versions 10 at Kong, somebody came up with a great idea of adding WebSockets, and it was somebody totally forgot to ask. Thank God they did. So it's there. When playing with this, one of the things you have to juggle with the most is the fact that you have a daisy chain, right? So timeouts, it's kind of the thing that you need to articulate on these things. After roughly a minute, we already got it. We're gonna get a timeout. Well, the ARI application is reconnecting, right? But that's definitely not something that you want a production application to be doing, right? It's gonna reconnect and keep going, and everything is fine. Let me see. Okay. So that's pretty much it. I tried to speed up. I'm sorry for that. But I believe we're kind of in time, right?
Yeah, we're at perfect time for questions, so how about a big round of applause for Gastón?